hello out there, friends, enemies, strangers, and family, I suppose, of all kinds. Welcome back to the Extra Milestone, your weekly Cinemaholic spinoff, where we go back in time to discuss the classic films that made the cinematic landscape what it is today. As always, I am your host, Sam Noland, a staff writer for Cinemaholics, and with me, I have someone I'm very excited to be talking to.
Oh, God.
For the first time in almost 2 years, I am podcasting again with my old compatriot from Anyway, That's All I Got, Mr. Jason Reed. Jason.
Oh, wow.
How are you?
Great. Wow. That was beautiful. I want to thank you. I want to thank your audience for, making me the most requested guest in Extra Milestone history.
Let's go with that.
Yeah. I know you made a poll about, who the audience wants to see in the next episode. And
yes,
for some reason I was at the top of the list.
Yeah. I think Terry Crews was at a close second for
close
reason.
Second. It's quite an honor to be, about 1,000 votes above Terry Crews. So
a measly 1,000 votes.
Measly 1,000. Yeah, I don't want to, I don't want it to get to my head. So
yeah,
thank you again. Yeah.
And Gene Siskel was third, which still blows my mind.
Gene Siskel, yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't know how good he'd be in podcast form. I'm here.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yes, you grew up with the art form.
I did. Yes. What did he have? A TV show? Ooh.
Something like that.
Something. Yeah.
Who are we to begrudge the legacy of Gene Siskel? I don't know how we got here.
No, yeah. Gene, it's love. I know you're listening. It's love.
Yes.
It's all love.
Love to you and Roger, Gene.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, Jason, it's been a long time since we podcasted together.
It has.
How does it feel to be back on the airwaves?
Nervous.
Yeah, really?
Always nervous. I don't know if you could tell with the old ones, but I was always so nervous.
I actually can't. You conduct yourself very well.
I find that hard to believe, but okay.
Well, I find it easy to believe because it's true. And don't play coy with me, Jason. I know you love it.
I've been told I have a charming panic about me,
Charming panic.
A charming panic.
.tumblr.com. That's what
exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been we did the Anyway, That's All I Got podcast together.
We did.
And that was the show that we did with Anthony Battaglia for the span of, what was it, like 6-7 months ish?
Oh my, I could not tell you.
It's weird to think that it was that long. Yeah, that podcast eventually kind of fizzled out for reasons that are shameful on my part, but
all of our parts, really. Life got in the way of all of us.
That's true, but it could have gone a lot better. So it's at least 93.7% my fault that it went out so anticlimactically.
Well, we're on to bigger and better things. Here we are.
I suppose so. Yes, here we are on the Extra Milestone. Not quite as ambitious as what we did on Anyway, That's All I Got, which is where we basically kind of the way, like our usual formula was we would talk about a different franchise every week, which was, as it turns out, that's really hard to do on a consistent basis.
Really, that's a lot of things to watch, and Lord knows I never watched all of it.
Yeah, that was kind of your deal. Was that we'd get to one of them, and we'd be like, Jason, what do you think? And you'd say, I actually have never seen this and have no intention to.
And so I tried to divert the conversation by being like, what did you guys think of this?
Yeah.
And it would work sometimes.
Or you'd bring up super kicks or some nonsense.
Or I would. Yeah.
That was a thing.
Yeah. I'd be like, oh, remember when Captain America used his super kicks? That was cool.
And we'd be like, yes, we do, Jason.
And that was the end of that segment.
And then we'd move on.
Exactly.
Much like we're going to do right now, because as has been established, this is the Extra Milestone. This is where we go back in time. And Jason, this is a bit of an interesting episode because in release order, at the very least, this is going to be the first episode in which, on the Extra Milestone, not one, not two, not four, actually, but 3 movies are being discussed.
Wait, this is the first time that's happened?
This is going to be the first one that the listeners hear where we've done more than 2.
Oh, I am honored.
You're not out of your depth. You're well within your depth. That's what I would say.
And, thank you for picking movies that I've already seen. So I wouldn't have to rewatch them, but I rewatched them anyway because they're all so fantastic, honestly.
Yeah, really. We got a really good crop here.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically the way it works is that I've got this is us. We are a bit behind on the Extra Milestone when it comes to what we're celebrating versus actual chronological time. So all these movies that we're discussing are celebrating anniversaries in the month of March, and it's late June now. So, but we're catching up slowly but surely. But yeah, I sent Jason a list of here's everything eligible for this month that hasn't already been chosen for other such episodes as this. And these were the 3 that we decided on, and I'm really glad because I think they all connect to each other.
They do.
Interesting ways.
They really do, actually.
For a variety of reasons.
In a variety of reasons. Yes, I was going to briefly mention that. Yeah. And
so I'm sure we'll get to that along the way. So just to give a quick preview before we dive head first into the cinematic treasures that we're unearthing today, we are going to be talking about Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, a true classic, defining milestone of the French New Wave and cinema in general. After that, we're going to be talking about Georges Franju's Eyes Without a Face, a horror movie that's incredibly influential and yet is not widely known or acclaimed as such others are. But everyone who's seen it loves it, and for good reason. We're going to be getting into that, and finally, we're going to conclude with a discussion of Dario Argento's Giallo classic Deep Red.
Is it Giallo?
Giallo. That's how I say it.
I've been saying Giallo my entire life.
Oh my goodness.
Oh
Jason,
no.
Shame
indeed. Shame indeed. Okay. That's great.
I'm 98% sure it's Giallo.
I trust you. You do your research.
I or at least I know how to make it look like I don't.
Yeah, I look at the word and I'm like, that's close enough. I'll probably mispronounce a couple names in here. We'll see.
I'll ridicule you relentlessly.
Yes, you will. You will. You'll be on standby.
Yeah, and speaking of words that will likely be mispronounced, let's talk about a French movie, shall we?
Yes.
Let us talk about this. This is going to be our featured review. So this is we're going to talk about Breathless, and we're gonna be getting pretty deep into the plot of this one. So if you haven't seen it and you'd like to, by all means, go and check it out. I highly recommend it, and then come back. The second 2, we're not going to be getting as intricate into it, so it's probably safe to listen to the conversation on those last 2 if you haven't seen the movies yet. But of course, that is your call, as always. But first, we gotta talk about Breathless, Jason.
Let's do it.
Est-ce que Patricia est avec vous?
Yes, she's over there.
Merci.
New York Herald Tribune! New York Herald Tribune!
Est-ce que tu m'accompagnes à Rome? Oui, c'est idiot, je t'aime. Je voulais te revoir pour savoir si te revoir me ferait plaisir.
Vous venez d'où? Monte-Carlo?
Non, de Marseille. Je suis resté samedi et dimanche à Monte-Carlo.
Et ta Ford, tu ne l'as plus?
Elle est au garage. Allez, quoi, je reste avec toi.
De toute façon, j'ai mal à la tête.
On ne sera pas ensemble, mais je voudrais rester à côté de toi.
Non, ce n'est pas ça, Michel. Pourquoi vous êtes triste?
Parce que je suis triste.
C'est idiot.
Yeah, so Breathless is the feature debut of Jean-Luc Godard, who is one of the kind of the founding fathers, so to speak, or founding members, I should say, of the French New Wave, which began in the late 50s and continued through. Sources differ, but like late 60s, early 70s-ish is when it started out. Now, Jason, before we talk about Breathless, I want to know, what is your connection not only to Breathless, the movie itself, but to Jean-Luc Godard as a director and the French New Wave as a whole?
Oh, wow.
Don't be afraid.
No, I believe me, I'm not. You know, we were talking about this briefly before, and it's difficult for me to talk about Godard in the sort of lens I think we're gonna talk about him in, because to me, Godard movies are much more of like a strange like experience where you just get very interesting characters, mainly interesting dialogue, some likable characters, mainly unlikable characters, and it's not so much about the plot. It's just basically, quick jokes or quick little, pieces of dialogue that stick with you after the movie's over. It's not as you would see most movies where it's like, oh, this story is so interesting. It has an interesting setup for the story, but it's mainly, we'll talk about later on. But my favorite sections of Breathless are the middle sections of it.
Very interesting.
Where it's just dialogue.
It's almost like a bunch of vignettes.
It is, yeah. And that's from what I've experienced of French New Wave movies, which is basically Godard movies and the Antoine Doinel movies of Truffaut. It seems just like a lot of vignettes. It's like vignette compilations almost.
Yeah, that was actually kind of one of the things that really defined the French New Wave. Yeah. And in case you don't know, just real quick, might as well give a shout out. Last year, the month of May, on the Extra Milestone, we celebrated the 60th anniversary of the 400 Blows. So you can go back and listen to that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fantastic movie. I just watched that recently. Fantastic.
Absolutely love it. It's really great. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that episode we did. That is in the archives as always. And now we're going to Godard, so it's actually kind of fitting that we managed to get both of the debut features of these monolithic directors, some might say. So Jason, I want to ask: do you know, how much do you know about sort of the inception of the French New Wave?
I suppose I like to think that I know a lot of it. I know that it was a lot of critics kind of turned directors who basically wanted to dismantle the conventional cinema that the world was used to. And actually you'd have Godard, Truffaut, Here's your first instance to correct me, Sam. Eric Romer? Romer, of course.
Let's not forget Agnes Varda.
Agnes Varda, of course.
Yes.
And, it was... They seemed to have a motto, which was Le Cinéma du Papa, which translates to Dad's Cinema, which basically was what they didn't want, Their new slogan was basically like, this ain't your daddy's cinema.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
I mean that's not exactly what their slogan was, but they wanted to dismantle the convention that was Dad's cinema. Yeah. So naturally, they wanted to create something that wasn't your daddy's cinema.
You might say they wanted to create a new wave.
A new wave. Yes.
Not an old wave.
A new.
You don't hear a lot of people talk about the French old wave. That's kind of it's just a bunch of really conventional dramas with no real substance.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm making that up, of course. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. It was those directors that you mentioned, plus a few others who have not lingered in the consciousness as much, but like Jacques Rivette, who appears in Breathless, actually, and Claude Chabrol, all of whom have at least a couple of classics to their name. They were critics for the French magazine Cahiers du Cinéma, which to this day is still kind of like the holy grail of critical publications.
It is as a matter of fact, around.
It's still around. I think they had some big buyout recently, so I think it might have changed fundamentally. But it's been operating for a very long time. Okay. And they are credited as originating the idea of auteur theory, which is basically the idea that which we very much live by now most of the time, that the director is kind of the foremost author of a piece.
it's kind of where the term auteur originated from, right?
Yeah, I think like the word existed beforehand, but they sort of parlayed it into cinematic use.
Yeah.
And to this day, we still think about movies as a product of their director. A lot of the times, at least. There are exceptions, of course, but like when we're referring to a movie, we talk about like what's something that came out recently, like Judd Apatow's The King of Staten Island. You know what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing.
Good example.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a recent movie.
Yeah.
Spike Lee's The Five Bloods.
The Five Bloods.
Like, that's the kind of thing.
Yeah.
We sort of view the director as the author of this piece, and indeed,
exactly. Yeah.
That's what happened. Was all these critics were just frustrated. They were not seeing the change they wanted to see. They wanted this youthful energy to be brought to it, I should say, and indeed. That's really what they did, and their contributions to cinema have not been cannot be understated. So, and what we're talking about now with Breathless is sort of the beginning of it, because Truffaut had already done the 400 Blows a year before, and Godard was like, I want in on this action, and so I did not actually know this beforehand, but Truffaut. Came up and Claude Chabrol as well, who is uncredited most of the time.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They came up with the original idea for Breathless.
Yeah, I just learned that too. I had no idea. Yeah,
I thought for sure it was a Godard, auteur thing. For lack of a better word.
Because I don't want to take away from the movie, but it doesn't seem like the kind of plot to be manifested by two separate auteurs.
Yeah,
besides Godard, but. It's welcome. It's great.
And the entire temperament of the movie is very Godard. And the reason for that is because Godard really brought a lot of his unique energy to it. And that energy is sort of this series of like unbridled emotional strokes, which I think is the reason what you're saying with how, especially this movie, what kind of stands out as being just sort of a collection of stuff that's happening. And it would probably not surprise you at all if you've seen this movie to find out that it was very much, the story was just sort of thought up on the spot. Like they did not have a script, so to speak, beforehand. Like they had a basic premise and they had kind of a trajectory in mind, but all the scenes they were filmed on the fly without permission a lot of the times.
Really?
And it just sort of came together right there in the moment. And I'm going to say this, you can tell.
You can't tell, and I feel like of the Godard movies that I've seen, you can tell a lot of the time if it's just like a on moment type thing. I read before that Godard would look at what Truffaut and I forget the other guy's name, but what they would have prepared for him, and the day or the morning of the shooting, he would kind of just personalize it.
Like I'm imagining some like big red marker that he just uncaps and says, I'm going to change that.
Exactly. Yeah. So he would, exactly. He would just, add his own little Godard twists to it.
Little Godardisms.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Godardisms.
Yeah. Check Webster. Get on it.
Godardisms.
I want it right now. Yeah. No, yeah, that was the thing. The ending, I found out, which we'll get to eventually, was changed significantly from what was originally written.
I could see that.
What actually ends up in the movie. And
I had no idea.
When I tell you the actual what it was supposed to be, it would have been a very different movie if that ending had been chosen.
Okay.
But yeah, so Godard was sort of this, like, was just sort of this id, like, just sort of spewing cinema out. That's kind of the vibe I get. When I watch a lot of his movies, very many of which I have seen. 2 years ago now, I went on sort of a French New Wave bender. I don't even remember why. I think I was just sort of in the mood.
I think, was it because the Image book was coming out that you started that? Or was it just
out of the Image book came like months later that year.
Okay.
I didn't even know about it. I just, out of the blue, for some reason, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to watch a ton of Godard and Truffaut and Agnes Varda movies, and I did, and it was fantastic.
I remember talking to you about that and attempting to hold the conversation with. I think I had only seen Breathless at the time, so I was like, "Yeah, no, French New Wave." They broke all the rules.
It sounded like Sylvester Stallone. Just
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
They broke rules. That's French New Wave. That's what they did.
That was kind of their thing.
But it was, that's the classic, film school. They didn't do the conventional editing that you would expect. And, that is very film school stuff that you would learn, but it's true. Like it, and it didn't come from, Godard's, like it wasn't purposeful in the moment. The jump cut editing. They didn't know about that until afterwards. Yeah, because from what I've read, it was the movie was 30 minutes longer than I think the studio wanted. I'm not sure. It was 30 minutes too long, and so Godard had to get rid of 30 minutes. So he on the fly just basically started these jump cut moments that were, I think, the most iconic parts about those movies. I think.
Yeah, that is kind of what that's kind of the one thing, if any, that Breathless really brought to the cinematic firmament. Now let's to establish some context, because we've talked in sort of big ideas about what Breathless and the French New Wave is all about. But just to sort of set the stage, so Breathless is the story of Michel, played by Jean-Paul Belmondo, who's a muse of the French New Wave, to say the least. Appeared in a lot of those movies and was always great.
Amazing face.
Yeah,
one of my favorite faces. Which is such a weird thing to say, but
only Jason Reed would have a favorite face.
You know when you see the face of an actor, when you watch a Safdie Brothers movie or someone, or one of those where they just have someone's just got an interesting face, and you're just like, yes, that's what I want in this movie.
Listeners, this is why I have Jason Reed on the podcast, because I would never, no one else would ever say these things. And
I'm
they're
a
glorious.
I'm a face man,
Face man.
I'm a face man.
Yeah. And it's not even, and it just to clarify, it's not even because they're attractive or compelling. It's just the literal face.
Yeah.
There's something about it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that is Jean-Paul Belmondo in a nutshell, is just this one hell of a face.
And this was his first feature film?
His first major role. It was his breakout. He'd played supporting roles in other things beforehand. I couldn't name them off the top of my head, but not his first movie necessarily. But kind of the first one that really exploded and made him a worldwide star. And he's still alive too, which is fantastic. Yeah. And guess what? Has the exact same face. I don't know if you've seen pictures.
Yes. I've seen his IMDb picture recently and he's doing one of, in the movie, he does those facial things where he opens his mouth, smiles, and then purses his lips. And his IMDb picture is him opening his mouth, just like how he does in the movie.
Oh, look at that.
Exactly the same.
I didn't know that. That's fantastic. Yeah. He knows what he means.
He knows.
To the history of cinema. But so we're introduced to this character, Michel, who's we get the sense right off the bat, kind of like a oddly rambunctious sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Just sort of, hot-headed
Bogardian
man about town. What's that?
Bogardian?
Well, yeah, that's the whole deal. We find out later in the movie that he's very specifically modeling his look after Humphrey Bogart, who of course was a huge star for a long time at that point. And first thing he does is, very easily, might I add, just steals a car.
Very easily, yeah. It makes me want to steal cars, of just how easily they're just in it, and then it's stolen.
The keys are always in the car.
Yeah, it is.
It's crazy. Yeah, and the sunroof is always down. It's very easy, apparently.
Yeah.
At this time and this place to steal a car. So that's what happens, and it's a cop car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he steals a cop car. Yeah. Finds of course there's a gun in the glove compartment, because of course there is, and just sort of drives away, and you can tell has no real reason, no ulterior motive to this, just sort of wants to do it. And then in this moment at the very beginning, which I think kind of unlocks the whole movie,
it kind of it's the loose story that surrounds this movie,
is that he's talking to himself and just saying these weird lines that are clearly written. Like this is not like naturalistic dialogue that he's saying to himself. And at one point looks directly into the camera.
Yeah.
And at this point I'm wondering, okay, does he know he's in a movie, or does he just go about life thinking that he's in the movie? And I tend to go with the latter. Did you think about
and
this?
See, that's the thing where I say I don't know how to talk about Godard. It's because he'll just do, things like that, which are, of course, pleasing to watch, but sometimes don't make a whole lot of sense. You could think about it the way that you're thinking about it, as you thought the latter. You said,
yeah, I think he just goes about life thinking that he's in a movie.
And that kind of matches the way he looks at that Bogart picture.
Exactly.
Beginning.
Yeah. This was actually one of the really, and we're jumping around a little bit, but it's whatever.
It doesn't matter in a movie like this.
Yeah.
Linearity does not matter. Yeah.
That's kind of one of the things that was really revolutionary. This is one of the first, if not the first. Like, I can't think of an example beforehand. I'm no historian or nothing, but I don't know anything where the characters would sort of openly acknowledge the existence of like the movies, like that other movies exist, or they would reference actual Hollywood history. They did it a little bit in the 400 Blows. But this is really explicit. It informs Michel's entire character, where you can tell that he's just sort of living life like moment to moment and not really giving much thought to any of the consequences, just sort of wants to live as if he's some like epic masculine anti-hero in a movie.
And that's kind of where like the youth part of this movie comes in, because it's like a very power to the youth type of movie, which I never expected it to be. I mean, like Gene Seberg is 21 in this movie. I'm 21 myself. I didn't see her as a 21-year-old. I expected her to be, I don't know, 10 years younger than me. All these characters to be way, way older than me. So I didn't, see it personally as a youth movie, but it totally makes sense for the time of it being.
Yeah, that I hadn't thought about that. I think I wasn't really giving much thought to like the generational aspect.
Yeah.
One thing that is important to keep in mind, though, is that this is 1960, as we mentioned, celebrating 60 years. This is kind of the first generation that grew up with the movies as like a really predominant entity in their life. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just sort of around from birth. And so it makes sense that they would sort of be what's the word I'm looking for? Just treating the cinema with this amount of reverence. And indeed, this is something that continues to this day. You'll see this a lot in, for instance, the films of Quentin Tarantino, where they'll sort of just reference pop culture whenever they feel like it. And that can be like an aspect of their character. Or it could just be incidental. Like it can show up just as soon as just about anything else. Like that really wasn't a thing before. It was just like, okay, there's the world that takes place in the movies, and then there's our world where we just have the movies, Yeah. It was this very separating thing.
It's very much a sort of universe where movies are a big part of pop culture and influence the character.
Yeah, hell, there's even a chase scene later where they dart like in and out of a theater in the middle of a movie, which would not fly today. And I say that as someone who works in a movie theater, so that was kind of amusing to watch. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so to get back to the sort of the way the movie starts is that Michel eventually it gets pursued by some motorcycle cops and ends up shooting one of them in what is presumably just sort of a crime of not necessarily passion, but just sort of in the moment, I'm being chased, I've got to defend myself or get away from this, and sprints away. And then it's not really until the third act that this comes up in a huge way again, that this guy is on the run from the police.
You know, he just kind of goes back into the city, tries to find people that owe him money, girls that he loves. I say girls because there's kind of multiple.
There are a couple,
Yeah. and you don't, hear about the whole police incident till I think, like a 2/3 into the movie, where it, shows on a paper that the police are closing in on. They already know who he is. There's no whole investigation side of it. They know him, and they're after him. There's a giant picture of him on the paper, and they're going after him, and it's just kind of like it's like a background problem for him.
Yeah, and that goes along with that whole sort of series of character traits that I was bringing up before, how he's not really giving much thought to like the future or even the present, really. And I think that is what makes his relationship with Patricia, played by Jean Seberg, who we meet shortly thereafter, that's what makes it so interesting. She's a much more interesting and well-rounded person than he is she not?
I mean, definitely. Compared to him, oh my goodness. I don't want to say it, but he's kind of an ass.
Yes, and absolutely.
That's the thing about Godard movies, is that he'll have these characters who are just complete asses. There's not a lot of redeeming characters about, or character traits about,
watch the movie Weekend if you want to see that. I
haven't even seen that one. I was thinking more of Masculine Feminine.
Yes. They're all just sort of a bunch of dumb kids who don't know
they're dumb kids. They're misogynists. They're you don't get a whole lot of likable traits about them, but just the way that they interact with their environment, the way that people interact back to them, makes it seem like it's its own kind of world. Like it's like outside of today's moral standings, where like if John Belmondo's character in this was in today's world, people would hate him.
Yeah, he would be a complete, like, just the most ripe for humiliation kind of character.
Yeah, people would be like, oh, this guy, what about this character am I supposed to like? But it's just this pulpy, noir. I don't think there's a single scene where he doesn't have a cigarette in his mouth. Something about that for the time, for 60s France, is just so like, I don't know. We've talked about, Ratatouille in the past, and how it's, some people will say it's just like, I don't want to say French porn, but you know what I mean? Like it's along those lines. And like, this is like almost the same, where it's just like the cigarettes, misogyny. I hate to say that, but like,
it's there.
It is. And it's horrible to say, but it's something about it is just very
superficially cool.
Yeah, intriguing of the time. It's interesting.
Yeah. No, that's the thing I find so fascinating about this, is that it's the movie Breathless is such an icon among certain circles, at the very least, of coolness. There are of course, it's sort of that secondhand coolness, because it's this character sort of basing his look off of like Humphrey Bogart and stuff. But really, it's all about the aesthetic of it. Like, Paris never looks better than it does in the French New Wave in black and white.
Yeah.
And this is true for like any French New Wave movie I've seen, where it looks so scintillating. There are like cafes all over the place, and everyone just seems
vibrancy, lights,
so dignified and so sure of themselves and everything. But at the heart of it, there is this facade. And I think that's what this movie is really getting into in earnest. I think I wanted to make sure I looked up this actor. You mentioned if Michel was a character now. If Michel was a character in like Booksmart, he'd be like the character Jared. You remember Jared?
Yeah.
He'd be that character. Where like thinks he's all that, but really everyone else just kind of snickers and like, here's Michelle again.
You could
like,
say that about most of the side characters in Booksmart, because they're
pretty much
they're all just full of themselves. Side characters, I mean.
A few of them.
Yeah.
Some more so than others, certainly. Yeah. But it is that facade of coolness that is really not practical. Like, I got to thinking, can I imagine this character, Michel? Can I imagine what he would be doing before I see the movie start? Like, can you, like, what does a normal day for Michel look like? It's hard to think, isn't it?
It honestly seems like exactly what the middle third of the movie is, where he's
pretty much
just not really doing anything,
just
he's
sort of screwing around.
Exactly. Taking money from his various girlfriends.
Trying again and again, like, hey, will you sleep with me? Like, he literally says that on a variety of occasions.
I think he says that the most throughout the whole movie. I mean, the whole the whole middle third is just him constantly egging Jean Seberg on to sleep with him while she wants to talk about Faulkner and all this other stuff, and he's just like, take your top off, and it's just like, oh, what a terrible person. But like,
no, she's to talk about Patricia a little more, she's a reporter, and she's an American living in Paris. Working for does she work for the Herald Tribune? I actually didn't catch that. I'm pretty sure.
Trust me, I didn't catch it that much either. All I know is that she sells that magazine, and that she also interviews the interviewees.
She's a reporter working for some publication. And is very interested in like the arts and just conducting sort of a normal life. And what we see happen over the course of the movie is that Michelle's sort of freewheeling, let's not give a damn about tomorrow sort of outlook on life. It sort of starts to get to her a little bit. She starts to get washed over in the sort of the excitement of that. And indeed, it is very exciting. And this movie is very convincing at making it look like, what if I just went around stealing cars?
It's a total Bonnie and Clyde situation.
Exactly. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the filmmakers of Bonnie and Clyde do cite Breathless as a significant source, which I was really pleased to find out, because I love Bonnie and Clyde. It's one of my favorite movies.
I know you do.
Yeah. Come the year 2022, we'll get to talk about that on the Extra Milestone, and I can't wait. It's going to be a hell of a day.
Marking my calendar now.
Oh man, I have plans that year.
Yeah, I know.
That's exactly what happens, is that she starts to get sort of sucked into it to the point of getting involved in the police and just not really being able to go about her normal day. And it ends up, I think we might as well just jump right to it. It just ends up with Michelle getting shot and killed. And that's it. Because there's no other rational conclusion to that lifestyle.
Yes. Beautiful shot of him running down the street, just
hobbling away.
Holding his bleeding back. And then his last breath is literally smoke coming out of his mouth.
Yeah, I love if you look closely, he's still holding the cigarette, even as he's collapsed.
Oh, is he really? I had no idea.
It's hilarious.
That is great.
Like he's so obsessed with looking and seeming cool.
Yeah.
He refuses to drop the cigarette, even when a mortal wound is inflicted.
And goddamn, is he cool?
Yes.
So
he's
cool.
He even dies cool.
Yeah.
Like, it's the greatest thing. But again, it's not a feasible way of life. And I think I was trying to think, because I think it's a legitimate question, and I'm not even convinced I know the answer. Is Godard aware of how false all of this is? Do you have a thought on this, Jason?
I could not tell you. Because
I think he kind of is. I think the thing with Godard, as I mentioned earlier, is that you can tell that of let's say the three big French New Wave directors. Let's sort of do one of those three circle Venn diagrams, whatever they're called.
Godard, Truffaut, Verda,
and Varda. Yeah. Yes,
Verda. Yeah,
Verda. Truffaut is very thoughtful. Like, not a lot of anger comes through in the works of Truffaut, for at least what I've seen, which is a good deal.
Yeah.
They're a lot more narratively driven. There's a clear arc taking place in all of Truffaut's movies. You talk about any of the Antoine Doinel movies, or a movie I just watched recently, The Mississippi Mermaid, also starring John Paul Belmondo, which is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen.
Really?
For the first third. And then it seamlessly transitions into a really sort of bizarre, like on the run thriller, and then gets really existential by the end, but it all fits together really really seamlessly. If Godard did that, it would be all over the place. It would be almost unwatchable, possibly in a good way.
Yeah. Which
Agnes
is
Varda, yeah.
Which is how his movies to me are. They're like, it's impossible for me to recommend Godard movies to people.
Because how do you even contextualize
exactly,
it?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying with like, how do you talk about Godard that much? Or just experimental
with all
movies
this,
like that.
It comes with all this like history and stuff. And yes, there is a plot technically.
Yeah.
But it's not really, it's clearly not the first thing on their mind. And it might not even be like the second or third or fourth.
Yeah.
It might be like way down the list. So Truffaut is that. Agnes Varda is taking more of like almost an objective look at the world around her. She's certainly the most artistic of the three of them when it comes to like just with every single one of her movies, there's some unique spin on it or some innovation or something that makes it unlike anything else. And so I have very little hesitation saying that she's probably the best filmmaker of the three of them. Not by a lot, granted, but just when it comes to contributing to the cinematic art form, I think Agnes Varda has it in the bag. And then Godard is just this like ball of weird inclinations bouncing around a room endlessly.
Yeah, I hate it when people call like so and so people like, oh, it's the bad boy of cinema or whatever. People call Harmony Korine the bad boy of.
No, they don't.
People do. Some people.
Oh,
I mean, I have seen articles been like interview with the bad boy of contemporary movies. I'm like, shut up, and. I can't, I could see publications saying the same thing about Godard, especially at the time.
Maybe so, yeah. But listen, it wouldn't. It's a weird. It's kind of a gauche thing to say. It's not entirely false though, because Godard, as we mentioned multiple times, has a very unique approach to storytelling, especially in this first one.
Yeah.
I don't even remember how I got on this point. How did I get to comparing the three of these directors? Or is it gone already?
Oh no. I don't know. It's so difficult talking about these movies.
We'll
I love them. I love them, but it's difficult to talk about,
Listen, I will say this real fast. We all know that the only two bad boys of cinema are Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. I'm going to put that to rest right now.
Okay. I'll agree to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to be hearing any of this stuff about Korine.
Harmony Korine. Who is he?
Vague publications that Jason has seen somewhere.
A Viceland, website talking about Harmony Korine, whatever.
Oh, I remember. It's because with that ending where it ends with Michelle dying, and that's literally the end. Nothing else happens.
Yeah.
Like it's just this sort of realization like, oh yeah, you're a criminal and you're on the run and you've been apprehended by the authorities.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is how this story would naturally end, especially if you're not like on the run. Like they're just sort of going about his day. He's giving no thought to trying to like clear his name. Not that there's a name to be cleared, but nothing of that kind.
They're standing over his body at the end and no one seems surprised.
There's a moment where I laughed out loud, which is where Michelle says, I'm one of the few people who actually like cops. I'm like, you murdered one of them with no thought to the repercussions.
Yep. Yeah.
Like that is where I get, that is where I can see sort of this youthful thing. It's almost like a naivete,
Yeah.
Where he thinks like, yeah, so what? I killed a cop. What does it matter? This is, we only, he'd say something like, you only live once. He'd say something like that, right?
Oh, he would. Yeah.
Yeah. And because he's so infatuated with this fake world of the cinema where like anything could happen, really, which of course it can, but of course there are consequences to your action. And so when I'm trying to think, does Godard really understand this? I think he does, but I think he's more interested in exploring what makes that kind of flip attitude, what makes it cool, And I think that is what most people think of when it comes to this movie. And listen, it's a very cool movie. It's very,
very cool.
It's a jazzy movie. The soundtrack alone is really fantastic. And we haven't gone into detail about the editing. It is a lot of jump cuts in scenes where a jump cut, if you don't know, is when a scene will basically cut to itself. Like it'll cut to a moment or two later, but for whatever reason has just removed a second or two, or maybe even a couple minutes. We may never know.
Yeah. So you'll get
stuff
like,
in between.
Yeah. So you'll get a fragment of a conversation, jump cut to a minute later. You get the
exact same conversation.
Tail end of that conversation. Exactly. And that does match the weird kind of, syncopated jazz score of the movie, where it's just like, it's not your daddy's jazz, where it's Kenny G or something like that. It very much matches the sporadic like editing of the movie. It's like we said earlier, just like vignettes, Yeah.
It makes it all feel like really fast moving. We actually don't really know how much, like what specific amount of time this takes place over. It can't be that long, like maybe a couple weeks. But it's never explicitly stated, and I think that works in the movie's favor.
It feels like it could be a day. If you look at
it, very well could be.
Like if you look at hard evidence in the movie, it's not a day, but it feels like it is. Yeah.
It feels like it's all taking place over just this very short, fiery amount of time. It's almost as if you think of stories where like, oh, they fell in love and their entire courtship and it all just went so fast. That's kind of what this feels like, even though you can tell throughout the movie, at least at the beginning, that Patricia isn't really having Michelle's nonsense. And I think that is
like she kind of like dishes it back. Or she'll just kind of disregard whatever nonsense he says, and there's something really just lovely about that.
Yeah, I really do love Patricia. More so than any other character.
Oh yeah, just hearing the nonsense he says, and then her just being like, oh, okay,
like, all right,
yeah,
all right, there, Michelle.
That was really nice about it. Yeah.
That was coming from a genuine place. I don't know if you know about like Jean Seberg's actual personal life, but she was a very, very active when it came to like making a change in the world. She was affiliated with the Black Panthers for a long time.
I do. Yeah, I remember reading about that recently, actually, when the Kristen Stewart movie was coming out. About her being affiliated with the Black Panthers, and this was kind of like her, because she was in a couple Preminger movies, and she was kind of like people didn't like her that much because of those movies. Like critics would kind of attack her from what I've read, I think, and this was like kind of her return or like comeback of some sorts, I think, because the two Otto movies that she was in before, I could be completely wrong about this, they tanked from what I know, and so this was like her comeback.
I didn't know that, actually. I believe it, though, because what I do know, I actually have seen the movie, the Seberg with Kristen Stewart.
Yeah.
Not a great movie. I think it's just sort of poorly told.
I've heard.
But it's actually very fascinating to know that she was this involved and died tragically at a very young age. And so it was always a shame to hear about when something like that happens to such a neat person,
Yeah.
But yeah, you can tell this was coming from a genuine place. This is very much how she sort of looked at the world. Like, listen, I'm doing like actual important things. I will take or leave whatever you got at any moment. But it is also,
and she does. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, exactly. It is also easy to see how she would be kind of charmed by this guy.
It's hard not to, he has a lot of traits that you just dislike, but like I said, the pulp noir aspects of him just bring you back in. It's hard to put into words.
And as we've mentioned, that face.
Something about that face. He's got a good face. Oh, so good.
Man. Yeah. I want a whole like mini series of just Jason reviewing the faces of celebrities.
I think that could be problematic.
like a 1 out of 10, and a 10 is John Paul Belmondo.
Yeah.
And don't say who a 1 is.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say like, and who would a 1 be? But then, yeah, don't.
You know, a 1.
That's when it starts getting problematic. Yeah,
it's actually impossible to get a 1. So that
yeah,
way,
yeah. No, yeah, not with me. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. This is a terrible idea. Forget I ever said it. But if anyone else wants to do it, and being aware
let me know
of the consequences of the potential backlash, you have our permission to produce that and cut Jason in on like a 60% of the royalties.
Less. I'll take less.
A 58% of the royalties.
58 is my number. Yep. All right, now let me ask
12% of the credit.
Well, yeah, I'll take that too. Doesn't matter. All right, let me ask you something. You mentioned earlier about a different ending that the movie had.
That's right.
Talk about that. Let me hear it.
Yeah. So the original ending that Truffaut and Claude Chabrol had envisioned for the movie was that the police are closing in, like Michelle's picture is on every newspaper, on like billboards and jumbotrons practically. But all he can think to do is just walk down the street in broad daylight with like all the police closing in without giving a thought to it. And all of the bystanders would just turn and look like, what is that guy doing? And it was going to be this ultimate, like just
John Wick 2.
Almost, yeah, pretty much like just this nail in the coffin of like, this guy doesn't even care about death. And I gotta say, the vision of that ending is neat. It sounds cool, but I honestly don't think it would have worked. I think it would have been just too contradictory, at least with the version of the movie we ultimately got, which was of course sort of molded by Godard. So maybe that's the reason it feels it would have felt out of place.
So that's the ending that Godard came up with himself. Like that's specifically what he wanted after being, given this other ending.
The ending that we ultimately got in the movie where Michelle dies, that was Godard's idea.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he wasn't having any of that like martyred hero stuff, which I like. I think it worked out for the best.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about Breathless. Of course, we're only just scratching the surface as always, and there are many different ways to look at this movie. But I think we got to a lot of cool stuff. I'm glad. I don't know if we've ever like actually clarified, but you're a fan of this movie, right?
Oh, I love this movie. I haven't seen a Godard movie or a French New Wave movie that I haven't liked. I remember seeing, Band Apart freshman year and not really enjoying it that much, but I want to see it again. And that's more than I can say for a lot of movies that I watched. And I'm like, I never want to see that again. But that one I wasn't a huge fan of, but I definitely would love to see it again.
Yeah.
I love Breathless. It's his only movie that I own on Criterion. So
nice. Yeah, good. It's a good Criterion Blu-ray too.
It's beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a fan of. I almost said Booksmart because I've still got that tab open on my clothes. I'm a fan of. It's another B movie. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I'm a Breathless fan. I think I have problems with it, specifically with the way it just sort of meanders in the middle. Like for a long time, there's just sort of nothing really happening besides these conversations that we've kind of basically gotten the gist of before.
Yeah. And that's my favorite aspect of the movie, actually.
All right.
The last third, I feel like meanders a bit for me, but.
See, I think it's just too exciting that it's all coming to a head.
I totally understand that. Yeah.
So I have issues here and there, but generally speaking, this is a very good movie. I think there's a lot of layers to it. We've gotten like, what would you say? Maybe 4 layers we've explored. There are
out of how many?
Out of like 1,000.
Exactly. No, and this is the kind of movie that you need to watch, form your own opinions for. If you hate it, I understand. If you love it, I understand. Like it's that kind of movie.
Yeah, at the very least, just to see where so many things sort of exploded onto the scene, and like every YouTube reviewer who does jump cuts all the time owes their allegiance to Breathless, and fittingly enough, they probably have never bothered to actually watch Breathless. So
exactly.
That's kind of the irony in that.
Yeah.
So we're fans. We're fans of Breathless.
Yes, definitely.
Another movie that I'm a huge fan of, and I'm pretty sure you are too.
Yes.
Also released in the year 1960 is a bit of an about face, but I think there's one bizarre similarity that I think I did not realize at the beginning of this. It is, as mentioned before, Georges Franju's Eyes Without a Face.
Pourquoi mens-tu? Depuis le temps que je te connais, je lis sur ton visage. Dis-moi la vérité.
Les gens n'approfondiront pas. Ils ne chercheront pas à savoir ce qui se passe ici, surtout.
Mais que se passe-t-il dans cette mystérieuse ville-là?
And you've seen this before, right?
I want
Jason?
to sing that Billy Joel song so bad. Sorry.
Billy Idol.
Did I say Billy Joel? Billy Idol. That Billie Eilish song. I want to sing that Billy Idol song so bad.
Yes.
What was your question?
What would Billy Joel's Eyes Without a Face be like?
Standing here, got eyes without a face. I don't know. Something.
Give it up
something
for Jason's Billy Joel impression.
Yeah. I've never heard a Billy Joel song. That's just what I assume.
You'd recognize a few of them. We're off on a tangent.
Yeah.
Though. Jason, you've seen Eyes Without a Face before, right?
Yes, I remember seeing it right before I arrived to college.
Okay.
I remember...
Right before we met.
A year before we met. And I remember having a conversation with you about the movie, or where you mentioned the movie. And
that is so me.
Yeah, I was... Exactly. I was so excited to just be like, yeah, I've seen this 60s French horror film that not a lot of people have seen. But I think when I saw it, I was just watching it, interested with the idea of it, not really paying attention to the actual movie. I was like, oh, this looks kind of creepy. Let me watch it. It's old. And, you know.
Honestly, that'll get you through a lot of it. A lot of this movie is just...
It really will. No. And this movie's atmosphere is like amazing. You know, you just got silent scenes of these characters walking through the corridors of this castle, basically. This
huge haunted horror death mansion.
It is a castle. It is insane. And they're just, you know, you get this Curb Your Enthusiasm type music playing outside of the castle.
It's
and then when you're
so unnerving. It's so weird because this movie starts. I first watched it back in, I want to say 2016, where I was just full bore, just any movie that crossed my path. I was like, I'll watch that one. I'll expand my cinematic knowledge. It was a good time. And I came upon this list on the internet at one point or another of like the best non-English language horror movies. And there were a bunch that I heard of before, like Ringu was on there. I think The Host might have been on there.
Ringu, Martyrs. I feel like that's probably on there, yeah.
Some others that you'd probably recognize. But then at number one, I remember it was the number one spot, was this movie Eyes Without a Face. And all it was this image of a woman with sort of curly hair with this like expressionless white rubber mask and just her big blue eyes poking out. And I was like, I'm terrifying. Watching that.
It is a terrifying image, but she also just has like these just doe eyes that kind of like contradict the scariness of the mask. It's a confusing look, but for most of the time, it is a terrifying face.
It fits with the ultimate theme that comes to glorious fruition in like the last couple of minutes of this movie. But yeah, so to give a little context, Eyes Without a Face is directed by Georges Franju, who is not an especially notable director besides this movie. Now, granted, I haven't seen any of the other ones, but I've never heard anyone say like, listen, I know he made this one Eyes Without a Face movie, but you got to check out some other stuff. One I do remember off the top of my head is that he remade, or not remade, but rather adapted the story Judex, which was a French serial that was done in like the 1910s and was one of the early like long form horror stories. Adapted that into a feature. I've been meaning to check that out for a while, but besides that, it's really just Eyes Without a Face. But I got to be honest, that's kind of enough
It's for sure enough.
Because this movie is really fantastic. I'm just going to come right out and say this is my favorite of the three that we're talking about today.
Okay.
I rewatched this.
I would completely understand that.
I rewatched this earlier today and was just blown away all over again. And I loved it the first time, but I had completely forgotten that the first thing in this movie, as the credits are playing over a dark and stormy night, because of course they are.
Yeah, of course.
Is this carnival music, and it's really creepy because it's the last thing you're expecting. You're expecting like
Curb Your Enthusiasm,
pretty much.
Yeah,
you're expecting like this sort of old school Universal monster movie, like wah, 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 like kind of creepy, ominous theme, but instead you're hearing the circus theme, and I still do not know why. Like, there's no circus in this movie,
and it still freaks you out, kind of.
Yeah,
because it does just as much of a job as. Oh, go on.
I was just saying, it's just this uncomfortable juxtaposition.
It is, yeah.
And of course, it's of course scary because if you have clownophobia or chlorophobia, that's what it's called. Clownophobia.
Same, whatever. Yeah.
You associate it with clowns, it's already scary right off the bat. So it's tremendously effective.
It really is. It's, it does just as good of a job as an actual scary score. Because it, you wouldn't want to sit in your room and listen to that song at night.
Probably not.
Definitely not.
I wouldn't begrudge anyone who did. Maybe that's your thing.
Yeah, to each their own.
This is a can of worms that I'm just going to close the lid on. Yeah. So the first thing we see is this dark and stormy night. There's a woman driving through the storm. The windshield wipers are on. She has this kind of look of panic on her face. Yep. We see a car come up behind her, and then in the rearview mirror, we spot there's someone in the back seat.
Yeah.
And they're not moving, and their face is completely obscured. And right away, we know something's not right. And so she parks and takes the body, which we realize at this point is a corpse, and just dumps it into a river.
Yep.
What a way to start a movie. This faceless... just this faceless form being discarded into the natural world.
And I really love movies where they'll open with something like that, and you're not really told what it is till about 2/3 into the movie, or you don't really like put the pieces together as to like what the hell is going on in that beginning, and you don't remember it either. Yeah.
And bonus points to any movie where that happens, and it's not a scene from the middle of the movie that they just
exactly.
That really drives me nuts.
That is absurd. Yeah.
Yeah. Only 2 times it ever worked are Raging Bull and Mission Impossible 3. That's it. Not kidding. Those are the only 2 times where a movie starts with a scene from either the middle or the end. And then like cut to it, and then like flashback, and then build up to that point. Those are the only 2 times I can think where it was.
You got a point.
It not only worked, but it made the movie better. I think those are the only 2 examples.
You're onto something there, Nolan. You're onto something there.
I thought you would find that funny. Yeah. Those are my exceptions.
Yeah. This movie, the opening of this movie, you wouldn't think that it's that terrifying based on that music that we have, or that we have in the scene, and it's a body disposal opening.
And that's all we get, and
that's all you get. Yeah,
I love the way this movie sort of slowly doles out information. So it cuts to this doctor, who we find out is a surgeon, giving this lecture about, I believe the word, if memory serves, is heterografting, which is the idea in layman's terms of basically taking part of someone and surgically giving it to someone else. And we're like, this is a movie about faces.
Yep.
I wonder.
If you've seen The Skin I Live In, you know what kind of movie this is.
You know about heterografting. And it's not just like, and it's not, and I think this, the lecture that is being given is basically saying like, scientists haven't really nailed that down, which I meant to look into the history of that to see if it's true. I imagine they'd done like blood transfusions before and stuff, but plastic surgery to this degree, I honestly don't know.
Could not work.
If it predates this, yeah, it was.
Absolutely none of this would work.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that
there's. I imagine there was some research done, but there's a lot of theoretical science going on here.
Yeah.
So gives a lecture, goes back to his office, and his like assistant or secretary or whatever says, "Professor, you received a call from the morgue," and we find out in a little passing bit of dialogue that his daughter had gone missing a week or two beforehand, and he gets this look on his face like, "Oh no." Which, as we find out, there are multiple ways to read that.
Yes.
Goes to the morgue, says, we found this body in the river, and the time of drowning, according to the autopsy, corresponds with when your daughter disappeared. And so they're like, is this your daughter? And so he goes in and says, yeah, it is. But here's the thing. It isn't.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean it's not?
We see there's someone else whose daughter had also suspiciously gone missing around that same time, also shows up to the morgue and says, "Oh gosh, that wasn't my daughter, was it?" And he's like, "No, it was mine. Yep. She's dead." And then this other guy just starts whining like, "Oh gosh, I'm so afraid." And just what is hilarious, if you know what we know, which is that that's not his daughter.
Yeah.
Just
in
says,
case
like,
you couldn't tell from my sarcasm.
Listen, what are you complaining to me for? My child has died, which is all the morbidly funnier knowing that it's actually the complete opposite. And so we know immediately that something is amiss.
Yeah.
And so he goes home and goes upstairs where he sees his daughter. There she is, alive and maybe not well, but
face down in a pillow.
Face down on a pillow.
Yeah.
We can't see her face at all. And we find out over the course of a variety of conversations that she's been in a terrible accident and some sort of car crash where, for whatever reason, her face could not be saved.
Yes, a car accident which was caused by her father.
Yeah.
Her father's reckless driving, of vague reckless driving. That's all we're told.
And so we realize immediately that he has this overwhelming sense of guilt. And because he's a plastic surgeon, has decided rather absent-mindedly that here's what I'll do. I'll find someone else with a similar face to my daughter, and I'll cut it off, and so that my daughter can have a face again.
And cut it off. He does.
Yes.
People of the 1960s, their Psycho was too much for them. And Psycho hides a lot of the violence in it. This movie does no such thing. Gives you close-ups of facial
mutilation.
Let's
just call it what it is.
I was watching it this morning, felt queasy. This movie's from 1960. Feeling quite queasy myself from watching.
Quite queasy with Jason Reed.
Quite. Hey, don't spoil my upcoming show.
My apologies. I did not realize that the announcement wasn't supposed to be made yet.
Yeah, that's the first episode.
Episode 1 and only Eyes Without a Face.
Yeah, and I
look forward to it.
It's like a minute long. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
But yeah, so we find out that this has been going on. That this has been going on for some time now, and that he's encountered some issues with trying to do this in the past. And really, a lot of this movie is not really about that concept, even though that's sort of the backdrop. It's really just this cold, clinical, straightforward depiction of what that process looks like, of trying to abduct someone, of actually cutting off their face, and it is intensely gruesome. And one thing that I do want to point out is that this is in France. This is so they actually had a different sort of censorship code at the time, and this is one of the first like horror movies that the French equivalent of Hollywood basically had decided to really like put all their chips on. And the director was very excited, but said, I want to make a horror movie, but I want to make a really thoughtful one. Like, I don't want to just make a monster movie where there's some like a big, like a Wolfman or a Frankenstein monster just hobbling down a hallway or something. I want to do something that the world has never seen before. And that really is what this ended up being, because this is has an atmosphere of something really dark and demented is going on here.
It really does.
Because the person doing that sort of dark demented stuff is the protagonist, it actually isn't depicted as horrifying. It is. I want to make that very clear. It is horrifying.
Yes, it's like the scene we mentioned earlier. It is horrifying. These sequences, but putting him as central character, and I there's a moment in the tail end of the movie that kind of makes us sympathize with him a tad bit more than the little shred we had in the beginning. The sequence with him and that boy, with the kid who I think he's suffering just some vague head trauma or something along those lines, and this doctor, this central character, holds up 4 fingers, and it's like, how many fingers am I holding up? Kid says 3, and you can just see like the disappointment, sadness in this central character's face, and how he really, really wants to help this kid. Mm-hmm. So he's not all bad.
Yeah, and because he's a working doctor. Like, he's not some recluse hiding in a mansion just carrying out these experiments. Yeah, he's like actually just going to work, doing just whatever needs to be done. Granted, he lives in a mansion. He's quite well off. Yes, but still, it's not like he's some cackling evil maniac. And it's actually it reminded me, I don't know if you've seen this, Jason, of the movie Maniac with Joe Spinell, which is notable. It's a movie about a serial killer entirely from the perspective of the killer. Like, a lot of serial killer movies are about tracking down the killer, and maybe it'll be about like a detective or a police officer trying to crack the code. This is just dumping you into the world of what it's like to be that person who is giving into these incredibly primordial inclinations and thinks very little of it. Like, does not realize the horrifying extents to which they're ruining someone else's life, if not a bunch of other lives. Because that is the thing, is that this doctor, this protagonist that we're following, is a homicidal maniac. He's engaged. Let's list. What are the charges? We have kidnapping, mutilation, deception, at the very least. What else have we got? Just complete.
Let's just throw murder in there.
Sure, yeah, because we have that corpse at the beginning. Yeah, whether it was accidental or not. Yeah, that person was dead. Exactly. They're not coming back to life. Yeah, you did that. They would have still been alive had you not abducted them for their face. Yep, and
just for their face.
Exactly. And
it's not going to last either. Of course, as we see, the faces do not last.
Yeah, because he basically just like peels the face off of the person and just puts it on his daughter's face and sews it on there. That's not going to work out unless you go to like a microscopic level and attach all of the nerve endings and stuff. And even then, it probably it just would not be compatible. Yeah. That's not a thing you can do. Yeah. But he's so driven.
And the movie acknowledges that, and I really love it for that. Like it acknowledges that it's not going to work, and that it's just this constant drive for him, his like guilt just weighing on him and all this stuff.
He's so driven by this inclination to, and this is what I really picked up on this time, and I want to know if you thought any of the same things, on this inclination to make his daughter beautiful again. Yeah, that's really what it is.
No,
when you think about
it. Yeah, and that's this theme that kind of goes throughout it. I definitely didn't pick up on the first time I watched it, was this like, creation of beauty, this taking away of other people's beauty.
Because the weird thing about this, and I may have missed a detail, but as near as I could tell, his daughter, and Christian is her name.
Yeah.
Like, she can be fine without the face. Like, it was a gruesome injury, and she received permanent scarring, which we only see like really blurry in one scene, which is tremendously effective.
It is. Oh, it is.
But as far as I know, it's not a mortal wound.
Yeah.
It's not like she has a ticking clock and is going to die because of it. It's all about this guy's need to make her sort of this angelic, beautiful, pretty to look at being.
Just like the picture that hangs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we see this painting, this like portrait of what she looked like before the accident. It's quite a, I mean, maybe a bit of a strong word, but I can't really think of a better one. Quite a misogynistic inclination, or chauvinistic inclination, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and we find out that she really hates this.
Yeah, she, it seems like in the beginning, she, her hatred for what she looks like, her fear of looking at herself in the beginning would justify this insane path that her father's going on. But throughout the rest of it, she, she's like, what the hell is going on? I don't want any of this.
Yeah.
This is awful. I don't like,
this is a living hell.
It doesn't matter that much to me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. It's
like, life will go on for me.
Yeah.
You're committing murder every week for this frivolous attempt to restore me to my natural, like my former glory, or whatever you want to call it.
And really, it's a selfish thing for him too. It seems like he's just doing it out of the guilt that he has in order to help himself.
And there's even a point where she tries to call her fiance, who is under the impression that she is dead. Let's not forget that the entire world believes that she has died horrifically in some sort of bizarre drowning accident after going missing. She wants to reconnect with the outside world, and then he bursts in and says, like, "What are you doing? You're not supposed to do that." And you realize in that moment, oh, she's being held here against her will and hates every second of it. Yeah. And this is existentially horrifying, isn't it? Like, imagine that your face gets melted off in an accident, just for the sake of argument. And your family keeps you like barricaded at home and will not even tell the world that you still exist.
Yeah.
That's intensely nightmarish.
Out of fear of what you look like.
Out of fear of rejection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like it's like some sort of Elephant Man story.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it is this intensely frightening situation that is maintained all throughout the movie, while at the same time is not really flourishing how horrifying it is. That's the thing I was most impressed by, is that it's not going out of its way to be all showy, like, look at me and how scary I am. I don't know why I did the Mark Hamill.
Yeah, I could
Joker
tell you. Yeah.
Like,
you leaned into that a bit.
Me, bats. I've turned into a monster, and you'll never see me again the way I was before.
I had to.
I know it. Yeah.
Oh, I love doing that voice. Yeah. No, but yeah, that is really what it is. And it's just, most of the movie, nothing really happens. We'll occasionally cut back to the detectives who are like sort of using these little clues they pick up along the way to try and track down what the hell is going on and why are all these people turning up missing and everything. And that's why I think that's kind of the weird parallel with Breathless that I was noticing. Like, that's also a movie where there's a character committing like some of the worst crimes imaginable, and just not really giving much thought to the punishment, to the point where the movie isn't even focusing on that. So it's kind of easy to forget that they're on that. I think that's fascinating that they have that.
Yeah. The investigation of it is a subplot. Like it's, it is nowhere in the focus.
And I will say this, again, we're not gonna give it away, but the way that subplot with the investigation and also the two main characters, the doctor and Christian, the way this movie ends, like the last 5 minutes, gave me like consistent chills for 5 minutes straight, and is one of the most cathartic endings I've seen in a long time. It is absolutely perfect.
It's very rare you get a horror movie where you feel good.
Yeah.
Or to an extent, I guess.
It's weird to think of, isn't it?
It is, especially after everything that has come before it. But I know exactly what you mean. Very, very cathartic.
I absolutely love the ending. Jason, before we move on to our final, our C feature, if you will, I want to. Is there anything else about Eyes Without a Face that you wanted to mention real quick? I have a couple of things.
Yeah, a lot of the things that characterize iconic horror movies that are even effective nowadays is just the horror aspects of it being still good. You can watch and still be terrified of it or something like that. And something that I realized watching this is that body horror is timeless.
Yes.
It never goes out of style because you have a body,
Yes.
And especially
generally speaking,
yes,
I think most everyone listening has a body.
Yeah, facial bodily horror, however you want to say that, is maybe even worse than most body horror. I know, facial body horror is part of body horror, but
sure,
that's your face. That's
that's how you present yourself.
Exactly. That and that is so timeless.
Mm-hmm.
Facial body horror, and I just think that just makes it immortal.
Yeah,
things like that. Yeah,
that's fascinating that you say. I hadn't thought of it in specifically that term, but you're absolutely right. That is just, and it's just one sequence in particular where this is really just flourished in this movie. The facial stuff. That is really terrifying, but I think what might even be more terrifying is the just what Christiane is going through. Like this being blocked off from the world. That is possibly even scarier to me. That's something so heinous and so controlling could just seem so normal to someone.
Yeah.
Like that's the scariest part, and I think that is what makes it really effective. For all 84 minutes, like it's not even a long movie. It's another
same with Breathless. It's that perfect 90-minute sweet spot.
Yeah, not a lot of movies, especially nowadays, they don't realize that 90 minutes can be enough.
It is the dream length for a movie.
You don't have to. Not every movie. I think there are some that deserve it. Like if Barry Lyndon was 90 minutes.
Yeah, there's some that need to be super long, but most movies you watch, you're like, best movies 90 minutes or 2 hours and 20 minutes or more.
There you go.
Those are the best movies.
Everything in between, none
bad.
of it.
It's bad.
Rejected.
Yeah.
I love it. What two quick things I want to mention, just a little sort of behind the scenes stuff that I found fascinating is, as I briefly alluded to earlier, this was kind of like a censorship minefield. Like there were certain countries that would tolerate with certain things in the movie as opposed to others. So they actually had to work very hard to make sure that every country would be able to comfortably sort of like be okay with this. Like for whatever reason, or I guess it kind of makes sense, but the country of Germany was not comfortable with there being a mad scientist character. So that might actually
that's what they had a problem with.
That's what the evil mad scientist, a lot of the time you'll notice, is a German character. I can't imagine that's the most flattering image.
Okay. No, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's actually, that might single-handedly be the reason why sort of the straightforwardness of this movie makes it so effective. That might be it right there, was because they didn't want it to be like some sort of gesticulating over the top evil character. So if that's true, thank you for that, Germany. You really did us a huge favor for that.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I just thought was hilarious was that this was released 2 years after it was initially released in France. In the U.S. in the year 1962 on a double bill with a Japanese monster movie called The Manster. Which just made me laugh like a maniac. Which, upon brief bits of research, is about a scientist that grows an extra head.
Oh, it's a man monster.
I really want to see that movie.
I get it, man monster. That's cool.
I really want to see The Manster now.
Definitely want to see that. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. I absolutely love Eyes Without a Face. I think it's one of the best horror movies ever made. Yeah. I appreciated it so much more this time, and I'm glad that you're presumably in the same boat. If I'm understanding.
I think all three of these movies sit at the same ranking for me.
Very nice. Well, that brings us, in that case, to our final film of the evening or morning or afternoon, whenever you happen to be listening to this. It is Dario Argento's Deep Red, who, of course, was kind of one of the founding fathers of the Giallo subgenre of horror, which contains a lot of fun stuff. Now, Jason, you've also seen this one before, correct?
Yes. I've seen a few of Argento's movies. This was, I think, the second one after Suspiria.
Nice. Yeah. I actually had not seen this one before, so this was the first time for me.
You have killed, and you will kill again.
You're getting closer and closer to the most unnatural kind of death. Beyond shock.
What was that?
Beyond horror. Into total
and
terror.
Weirdly enough, the funny thing is that on Extra Milestone, what we do, of course, if you know, is we celebrate the anniversaries of movies in multiples of 5. So, for instance, in this year, if it came out in a year ending with a 0 or a 5, it's eligible. And Dario Argento just so happened to have like 5 of those. So I think in 1970, 75, 80, and 85, Dario Argento released a movie in all of those years. So they've actually been on the list. And so I've been getting to check them out for that reason. So just recently, in fact, I crossed off a bunch of Dario Argento movies off my list. Prior to that, I had only seen Suspiria years ago for some reason. But now that I'm really getting into it, I wish I had a long time ago, because this is some really fun stuff. Now, Jason,
it is.
I watched this actually over the course of 2 days, so I'm somewhat hazy on the plot. Tell me, what is the deal, so to speak, with Deep Red?
Okay, yeah. So it starts. So this is something we kind of talked about earlier, actually, where it'll open with something that is kind of revealed way later on.
Yeah, it is chronological though, so I allow for it. This has happened. Yes. It starts with this prologue where we see like some gruesome murder happen
with this terrifying music in the background.
Yeah,
which is just la 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 la. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's
awful.
haunting. And there's a bloody knife and a child there.
Yep.
And then it cuts to years later.
Years later, you hear the very, very famous Goblin score. Which is just kick ass. Oh my God. The music in this never fits the scene for me.
And that's the best part.
But it is so good. It's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. But
almost as good as the one for Suspiria, I think.
Oh yeah. It's to me they're on par with each other. Suspiria, fits the movie a bit more, but
yeah,
I would rather listen to the Deep Red score. But anyway, you get a little taste of that score. It cuts off, and then you camera zooms into this red curtain room where this how would a psychic like event, like a psychic TED talk.
Yeah,
like what is that?
A psychic reading? I'm not sure. I don't know actually.
Yeah, so this lady, the psychic, she begins her thing, her TED talk, whatever it is, by saying that she can't see the future, but she can feel thoughts, and like when they are happening, she can
feel like intentions.
Yes. So if there is an especially evil thought or an intention, it will like linger in the room, and so of course she decides to prove her ability by letting us know that a man in the third row is holding keys in his pocket. Everyone's amazed by that, but then she starts, twitching and, losing her mind because there is an evil presence in the room. Someone in that room has killed and will kill again, from her words, I believe.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, an incredible way to introduce a killer without showing the killer. Having him be in a room and having someone know that there is a killer in the room, but they just can't.
Yeah. And then what happens immediately after?
This woman leaves.
Yeah.
And she is killed by this person.
Of course.
And her murder is what sets in motion the central character. What is his name?
Oh gosh, it's
I was hoping you would know this. Okay.
I'm so bad with names.
It's okay. It's okay. A British guy in the movie.
Yes. Looking it up right now.
I think he's the only British man in it.
Marcus Daly.
Yeah. Marcus Daly is sitting outside with his drunkard friend Carlo.
Yes.
They're both pianists. Mm-hmm. For some reason.
After like a really rockin' session that they just
had. So they're just kind of hanging outside, and eventually Carlo leaves, and Marcus is unfortunately present when the psychic from the beginning is murdered in her window. He sees this, runs up there, is too late, she's dead, and he's kind of not really thrown into this murder mystery, but he just kind of chooses to be a part of it.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true, because it's until like the next day or something, we meet this reporter. Let me look up her name. Gianna Brezzi shows up.
Yeah.
She's a sort of this like feisty newspaper reporter.
The classic newspaper reporter. I get the stories.
Yeah, I'm the one who's there.
Yeah.
And in her report of like there was a murder last night is his picture front and center linking to the murder.
That is true. Yes. So he does kind of get, and this psychic woman is killed just because she knows that whoever was in that room is the killer.
Yeah.
Right. There's not really much to it than that. So having this character be the literal face of the newspapers, being like, this guy saw who killed this woman, it puts him as target. So I guess in a way he is kind of thrown into it, but
and Gianna ultimately expresses remorse over this, like, oh gosh, I did not realize that I was going to thrust you head first into this deadly game of cat and mouse that we're in.
Yes. So basically our central character is just, like you said, in this almost cat and mouse sort of trying to figure out who the killer is, why, what there's something about a painting that he's not sure about.
They just go on this collision course where they're following all of these bizarre leads involving like a hidden room in a mansion, and like writing on the condensation of a wall as someone is like drawing their last breath. And it's a lot of really, I hesitate to say zany because that makes it seem like it's a whole lot of fun. That's kind of the attitude of it. I think it's at this point when we should talk a little bit about the Giallo genre as a whole, which is hard to say, by the way. It is, and just to preface right off the bat, I'm actually not intimately familiar with the genre. Most of what I know,
we can try our best.
Most of what I know is from Dario Argento movies, of which I've seen, I guess,
Mario Bava.
I guess I've seen 6 of them at this point, which is not unimpressive, I suppose. But the vibe I've gotten so far is that they're horror movies. They're very colorful, they're bright, they're vibrant, and they appreciate the drama and the power of a good kill. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about.
That's pretty much what you're going to get from those movies. Is the plot is not going to be that great, you know.
Not really. But weirdly intricate in this one, though.
Yeah, you're going to get good music, good lighting, and good kills. That is what you're guaranteed with a Giallo movie.
Mm-hmm. And really dramatic too. Like the Final Destination movies would not be around if it were not for the Giallo subgenre, which is just involving all parts of the environment in the most creative, and just downright unusual ways you can think of. There are very few other movies with before specific Giallo kills which had this kind of death scene. As near as I could tell, there's no scene in any movie before Deep Red in which someone is drowned in scalding water, just to make it all the more intense.
Doesn't make sense, but
it does.
It's brutal. It's brutal.
It doesn't need to make sense.
Yeah.
And you watch this movie and a lot of I actually watched a few other Dario Argento movies the last couple of days in preparation for this, and you can see the DNA of the slasher genre that we would come to know. You can see the gruesomeness of the kills, but also the glee that the movie takes in it. The kind of the thin layer of artificiality over it that sort of invites you in and says, listen, we know it's death, we know it's pain, but also they're inviting you to have fun with it because you know it's just a movie.
And that's kind of
acting in Dario Argento movies is not good acting.
No, and that's kind of where the music in this one especially comes from. You know, early on in the movie, the main character, I forget his name again. Who cares? Marcus.
Yes.
He is
the guy from Blow Up. Just say that.
Oh my God!
Did you not know that?
Oh my God! No, I had no idea. I had no idea. It totally makes sense. But so he's in his house playing piano. Yep. And you get a moment where his name is whispered by the killer, which is terrifying. It is I got immediate goosebumps as soon as that happened. And then this kick-ass sweet sweetback music starts playing and then I'm like, wait, what?
You're totally right.
Yeah, so it's like chase scene music. And it's it's awesome. It's fantastic music, but it just doesn't fit at all. But it's just fun.
Yeah, something it's such about a weird series of instruments that you've never heard in this combination before. That just gives so much life to the scene.
Yeah,
and no matter what happens in it, you're totally there. And of course, it's a horror movie. It's a Giallo movie. Almost everyone in the movie ends up dead. I think literally. I can think of 2 characters that don't die by the end of this movie. You can pretty reasonably predict who it is.
Yeah.
But even still, that's the thing about that I really love about Dario Argento especially, and for all I know the entire genre or subgenre I should say. There's this existential feeling of dread hanging over all of it, that something has awoken, something that we don't even understand. And almost none of us will make it out of this. I think that works best in Inferno. I don't know if you've seen Inferno.
I haven't seen Inferno, but that's one of the things I really love about Dario Argento movies. He will have a killer in the movie, but there's something
else
bigger than that, you know. And the way that the camera will move throughout scenes makes it seem like there is this evil presence just arriving, and that's kind of reflected in the whole psychic whatever's going on in the beginning. There's this lingering evil that is just in places, and the camera reflects that, and Argento just kind of goes above and beyond to just create this otherworldly thing out of just murders, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's very good word choice, otherworldly, because it's very they take very special care to not show the world outside of this dread that has suddenly burst into the world from out of nowhere. Usually, it's like the entire world is alive in these movies, most of them at least, and it's out to get you. And there's something that should be terrifying, and in the hands of a differently inclined director, it would be really dreadful and existential. But something about watching it with this, again, I use the word again, this lens of artificiality makes it so much more fun than almost any other kind of horror movie.
Yeah.
And it is death as a means to excitement. Fake death, I should say.
And that's one of the reasons I love the horror genre, is just because I get so much enjoyment out of these just horrible, like, macabre things happening to these people. And Argento just really, like, dives into that. He just, like, knows that you're having fun with it. Like, if you've ever seen Demons, that's just, like, it's just so tongue-in-cheek, like, just gross.
And it's never so realistic that it's off-putting. Like, the blood in Dario Argento movies, I think, is literally just red acrylic paint. They don't make it look like blood at all.
Yeah, it's very much just the brightest, like how a preschooler would expect blood to be like, without really knowing what like blood looks like. It's literally just paint, melted Play-Doh. Like it's just, it's ridiculous. But don't get me wrong, this movie is terrifying. Like,
it's still scary.
It is so scary. It has two scenes that, three scenes actually. Now that I watch it, that I was watching it last night. That my friend was sleeping next to me on the couch, and I woke him up from jumping and actually like screaming at one point.
Was it? Could I just a yes or no question?
Yes, this might be spoiler. Yes.
Oh my gosh! There's a scene. We're not going to say what happens. There's a scene with a doll in this movie that is one of the scariest images I've ever seen in my life.
And it's such an effective jump scare. It's not, it's not a modern horror film where it's just the jump comes out of nowhere. You're looking at the shot for about like 5 seconds, and then it happens. And it is, it is terrifying. And it doesn't make sense for the movie, really.
It's completely, there's no reason for it to happen except that it's one of the scariest things ever.
It really is.
They knew they could do it, and they did it. And they put it in there knowing that we would be along for the ride. And we are. And that's what makes it, if you watch a bunch of these, you'll start to notice patterns like that, where it's sort of giving you a hint as to what's about to happen. For instance, if you're watching a Giallo movie, and you see a character alone at night pacing in a study with a drink in their hand, they're about to die.
They're about to die.
Without a fail, without any exception. That is just universal shorthand for this character. Yeah.
That happens 3 or 4 times in this movie. I think all of the deaths happen because of this, or in a similar situation like this.
Yeah.
No, that is spot on. Yeah.
No, I think Inferno again is my favorite. The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which is Dario Argento's first movie, that's not as steeped in the Giallo tropes that you might recognize over time. That's more of a straightforward murder, but you can see the blueprints of what was to eventually blossom out of this cinematic voice. I think that specifically, the trope in a lot of horror movies, and even just like thrillers in general, where it looks like everything's solved, it looks like things have all gone back to normal, but there's one weird loose end that they can't quite make sense of, and then they realize, wait a second, this isn't over yet.
Yep.
There's a lot of that here.
When that happened in this movie, I chills. I seriously, I've seen this movie before, and I did not remember any of this. And I got chills and had to I honestly paused it for a bit. It's really not that scary, but just to me, it just gave me chills. Like the reveal of what happens in the end is just, it's terrifying to me. Just like a little. It doesn't make sense if you really think about it.
Very little of it actually makes sense.
Yeah, but it's just effective to me. I can't put it into words really, but
nor do you have to. I think it's a very specific kind of horror, and that only a few directors have really nailed down. But when they do, it's something really special, as I think we can both agree it is in Deep Red. I take a little bit of issues. I think the plot could be delivered a little bit better. Like I still have trouble understanding how they get from certain points to others. I'm sure if I rewatched it would become more clear. Was a little distracting.
The second half, plot-wise, is totally ridiculous and almost irrelevant.
Yeah.
And the first half, you can get into it, but then when the second half comes, like, it also is kind of irrelevant. Yeah. Some of it just, there's a bit too many conveniences. If you're someone who hates conveniences in horror movies,
it's not the first thing. It's not the first thing on their mind, so it's clear to see how maybe they wouldn't give much thought to that. But it is kind of distracting if you notice it. But even still, the joyous, the glorious, even terror and horror of it all is more than enough to get you through it. And I think this is as good a place as any to start with Argento or the Giallo subgenre as a whole. I really dug it. I'm glad I got a chance to watch it. Did you have any other point you wanted to make about Deep Red?
I mean, really, if you love good music, if you love colors, if you like really nice golds, deep reds,
yes. And really creative kills that involve the environment in fantastic ways.
Yes, then you will love this one. Don't bank on the plot too much.
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
But it's also not,
and it's
that's
also
really all you need to do.
It's also a short one. I think it's an hour 40 something.
It's an hour 40 if you watch the American version that's on.
There's multiple
currently
versions
on Amazon Prime. In doing research, I found out that the original Italian version is about 20 minutes longer. I managed to track that down and watch it. Maybe it might play a little bit better. As far as I can tell, the changes are not instrumental. It's just sort of like a scene here, a line of dialogue there that eventually got it to 20 minutes. I actually don't know. But regardless,
and if
whatever version you can get.
Yeah, if you have a problem with the story, it's not going to be that scarring of the movie because it is that short, and I think the positives outweigh the negatives.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a hell of a triple feature today, didn't we, Jason?
I don't think I've had a triple feature that I loved this much in a very, very long time.
Yeah, I knew that when we decided on these three, I knew it was going to be a fun episode, and indeed it was. I had a ton of fun. Thank you for joining me on this, Jason.
Yeah, thank you. This was fantastic. Yeah.
Care to come back sometime?
Yeah, you let me know.
Of course.
Lord knows I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, not at the moment. Yeah, no. This is going to become a weekly and occasionally bi-weekly thing. So definitely, I will let you know when there's something especially Jason-y.
Anything with faces, I'm there. Yeah,
I'll know who to have back.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that's about everything. Jason, I didn't ask you about this before. Is there anything at all you wanted to plug, or just like your Letterboxd account or anything?
Find me on Letterboxd, Jason Reed. I don't even know what my name on there is.
It could be anything. Yeah,
find me.
We're not up to a whole lot these days.
Yeah,
but this is always a good place to find us.
Yeah.
And I think to quote our old podcast, that's all we got.
Oh my God.
From the Internet Colorado, I'm Sam Noland.
I'm Jason Reed.
And we'll see you next time.